stay here. I risk everything. I leave everything behind.
Или потому что я сильная. Привет.
Weißt du, wie ich heiße? Gert. Wie heiße ich?
Не чіпай Барбі. Це кімната дружини Герта. Вона померла 5 місяців тому. Але Герт дозволив мені лишитися і працювати далі. Він дуже хоче з тобою подружитися. Ні. Пожалуйста. Обіцяй мені, що більше ніколи не будеш з Гертом. Тільки ти і я.
Немедленно открой дверь. Я твоя мама, ты меня должен слушаться. Открывай двери немедленно.
Roman! Hey, du musst hören, wenn ich dir etwas sage.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Selamat sore. Welcome to another session of Film Talk with me, Noval. I'm the festival co-director. We were initially supposed to be talking with Marcus Lenz. He's the director of the Rivale, but unexpected. It's not an incident, but an unexpected thing came up. So we are now joined by Lars Hubrich. Hi, Lars.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I actually just talked to Marcus. He called me. He's also a documentary filmmaker. And
Yes.
a volcano erupted on a Spanish island. So he had to fly there to shoot some footage. He's very sorry. He would have loved to be here, but
Right. Well, I mean, a filmmaker's job is to capture the moment first before it goes away. But thanks for stepping in at the last minute. Before we begin, let me address our audience and explain how this webinar works. Kindly be informed that this webinar is being recorded and it's also broadcasted live in the YouTube at the moment. You are all muted, so to enable the speakers to speak without interruptions. However, if you have any questions, you can see the Q&A box at the right bottom of your screen. You can type in your questions, be it in English or in Indonesian. If it is in Indonesian, help translate it to English because the session this afternoon will be conducted entirely in English. So Lars, once again, thanks for stepping in the last minute to do this Q&A. And it's really interesting because as we line up the program for this year's festival, one of the films that stand out the most is actually Rivale. And the moment that we pick Rivale as part of our lineup, we are very keen to hear the filmmakers behind this film to explain, well, basically to explain about the film, because this is the film that leaves, one of the films that leave a very strong impression. And from the people that have watched the film, we share the same reaction, with the same comment. One of the words that is often used when I read the comments, because the film started screening yesterday, is that how intense the film is. So as a screenwriter, I would like to know whether this is your intention already in the beginning, when you made the first draft of the film, that you know that you will make the film sort of like a thriller with this level of intensity.
Well, we always knew that we wanted to tell a story that is not a social drama that just addresses social issues, but we wanted to have a real suspenseful film that is a little bit more universal. We didn't want to talk about the current situation in Germany per se. I mean, that's in the background, but we wanted to tell sort of a timeless story that will also work in 10 years or in 20 years. And we worked really hard on adding pressure to the characters all the time so that the story moves forward quickly. So intensity was definitely something that we worked on very hard.
And how do you define the film actually in terms of genre? Because initially, as an audience or as a film programmer myself, I see this as a coming of age film. But then as the story unravels, like what you said, the current issues of in Germany, yes, it is seen as the background, but it also plays a huge important plot point for the two characters. And so, yeah, how do you define this in terms of the genre of the film?
You know, one of the countries whose movies I like the most is Korea. And one of the things I like about Korean films is that they often shift genre, or they can be very funny and then very scary and, you know, seconds later. And I enjoy watching those films. So I think with Rivale, we also have a mixture of things. It's definitely a coming of age story because the boy has to grow up very fast, very fast. But there's elements of suspense and also some social commentary, I guess, is also in there. But it's the mixture which makes it interesting because you never really know what happens next because you're not stuck within one genre. You can break out of the genre. So a lot of the cliches you can avoid that way.
And this is an original film. How did you how did you come with the idea of the story?
This is actually something that's based on a moment that Marcus witnessed as a documentary filmmaker. He was making a documentary and he was following a woman from Eastern Europe, and he followed her to the airport where she picked up her son, and she was with an older man that she worked for. And the relationship between the three was really strange. And he told me about this, and we thought, oh, this is a great starting point for a story. Let's get our imagination going and see what we can come up with. But it's based on that little moment, just a couple of seconds that he witnessed that he felt was very strong.
I see. Whatever happened to that documentary idea?
The documentary was done. Actually, the woman was cut out of the film. They focused on something else. But you never know what you come across. You know, maybe a feature film comes out of it.
You're right. And then immediately after he told you or he shared with you that moment, and then you just immediately connect with it and started writing? Or what? Yeah,
we immediately connected with the starting point, and then we sort of talked about what could happen, what could go wrong in that relationship to set a story. And then we went back and forth and shared ideas, and after a while, we felt like we had a really good story, strong story to work with.
And was it already conceptualized from the beginning that you will tell this story from the perspective of the boy?
Yes, we knew from the very beginning we want to stick to the boy's perspective, and also they don't speak each other's language, so all of these things were there from the very beginning. So there's very little dialogue. And you're really stuck with the boy. We never leave that perspective. That was very clear from the beginning.
This is something that we are not familiar in terms of the immigration matters, particularly between Eastern Europe and Western Europe. But why does the woman have to come from Ukraine?
Well, we thought about, originally, actually, I think the woman was from Albania. We changed it to Ukraine because we had production partners there. But there's the reality is that there are a lot of illegal workers who work in that section, taking care of elderly, because Germany has an aging population. There are a lot of old people and not that many young. So they need people to take care of the elderly. And there are a lot of illegal workers in Germany.
I see. And then, obviously, since you already know from the beginning that this film will be told from the perspective of a boy, then the film will rest almost entirely on the shoulder of the lead character. And I have to say that lead actor, I hope I say the name correctly, Yelizar Nazarenko, who plays Roman. How did you find him?
This was something that was done with a casting agency in the Ukraine. And Marcus was looking at hundreds of children. And actually, I think the casting agency at first said, oh, you don't want to see this boy. But Marcus was really, really fascinated by him. He was very emotional, very open. And Marcus thought that his face could really carry a film. The face is interesting enough to look at for a longer time. He also had a very special way of working with the boy. If you want to hear about this, he never showed the boy the screenplay.
Oh,
so
okay.
So the way
this is interesting.
So the way he worked was he would explain to him the situation. This is the situation that you're in. Now do what you feel like you would be doing. And 70 or 80% of the time, the boy would do what we had written in the script. But there were like 20, 30% where he would surprise us with something completely different. So the idea behind that was that the boy wouldn't, try to remember movements or plot points, but would have a really fresh, sort of unfiltered response to the situation. And that's why I think his emotional state in the film is so raw. It doesn't feel very acted. It feels very alive.
No, not at all. It doesn't feel staged. But with that approach, I wonder how many scenes you did in a day with that boy. It must be, I don't know. I can imagine it must be a very long shooting days.
I think they had pretty well. Since you have a boy of a certain age, you cannot go for too long. They're very strict. I think they shot 20 days in Germany and 20 days in the Ukraine.
Okay.
So there were 40 shooting days in total, which is quite a lot for a small film, right? We didn't have a big budget. We didn't have a big budget, but the shooting in Ukraine was cheaper, so they could do that.
Okay. I wonder if you changed, or do you have to modify or adjust the script once you pick Yelizar Nazarenko, who plays Roman, or to avoid the changes, then you decided to, not showing the screenplay to him, but just give him, like what you said, bits and pieces?
Well, there were some things that came out, but that was during the shooting. And we had Marcus and I, we worked for a couple of years on the screenplay. So Marcus knew the story in and out. So when he had to change something, he was on safe grounds, right? Because he knew he could always go back to the screenplay if something didn't work out. So there are some changes, the screaming that the boy does sometimes, this almost animal-like sounds. That's something that came from the boy. and the very end actually was improvised. We had a different ending written, which Marcus, I believe, also shot. But when he shot that scene, he felt like, okay, this is the stronger ending.
Well, we will definitely talk about the ending, but it will come much later. I also want to highlight the characters, the other two characters, Oksana and Gert. Personally, I didn't expect these supporting characters to be three-dimensional, to be like a well-rounded characters. So we couldn't help that we still root for them. Like we are still glued to their story despite them not being present in the whole film. What was your approach in crafting these two adult characters?
Well, with the mother, it was interesting because we had to tell a love story, but they hadn't seen each other for 3 years. So and you know, in that time of a child's life, they changed so much. So it's almost like two strangers that know they should love each other, but they have to get to know each other again. So it was that was the approach, that the boy wasn't always, that the boy looked at his mother almost like she was a stranger in a way, and that made it more interesting, the dynamic. And with Gert, we thought, you know, there are so many films where there's a bad man, you know, abusing a child or being bad, and we didn't want to add another character to that, but we wanted to shift the sympathies and sometimes think that, oh, the boy is doing something really bad, the poor man, right? But that's, you know, that's what life is like. Your sympathies sometimes shift, especially if you're in an extreme situation. So we wanted to, you know, keep the audience on its toes so that they don't think, oh, that's the kind of man this is, and now I can lean back and I don't have to think about it again. And I think it makes it more dramatic when something happens to the man. You feel bad for him. I think, you know, emotionally, I think it resonates more. Yeah.
Essentially, we find that actually Gert is a good-hearted man, yet he is somehow stuck in the system that he is unable to change. And even for audience, even if you're not familiar with the system, but we can feel. So yeah, I don't know if you know, but I wonder, how did Marcus direct these actors?
Well, the actor who played Gerd Schwarz, Udo Samel, he's a very, very well-known actor in Germany. You know, he's been in a lot of big films, and I think he read the screenplay and he immediately got who he was. And Marcus had a lot of work to do with the boy. And Udo is such a professional that he already delivered something that had 3 dimensions to it. With Maria, who plays the mother, she also worked more closely with the boy because they also spoke the same language. So there was a different kind of connection, which is paralleled in the film.
Okay. And you mentioned about that you like Korean films. Were there any other films or that influenced your writing while making this film, or maybe music, books, or plays, or perhaps other stories?
Well, there's the Truffaut film, you know.
Right.
Yeah, 400 kisses, 400 blows.
400 blows, yes.
Yes, and we also looked at 2 films. One was about boys that are being left behind without a family. One was Empire of the Sun by Spielberg,
right? Yeah,
with Christian Bale, and the other one was a Neil Jordan film, Butcher Boy, which is not so often seen, but it's quite an interesting film based on a novel by Patrick McCabe, where a boy actually is alone with a dead body too. And it's a very extreme, a little more fantastical film. But actually seeing Butcher Boy, I think, also helped us to work in the dream sequences in Rivale. You know, there are a couple of dream sequences which we added also to move it away from this kind of social realism. You know, I think by adding this fantasy level almost, it elevates the thing into a more allegorical level.
And you seem to be watching a lot of coming of age films. Were those 3 among your favorites?
I watch a lot of films in general, but these are, yeah, I like them quite a lot. I think with Spielberg, he's always, even if the film doesn't fully succeed, there's always something very interesting. He's just a very elegant visual storyteller. Butcher Boy was a film I saw a long time ago, and I just wanted to revisit. And the Truffaut, once you saw that film, it'll always stick with you.
Yeah. And okay, now we come to the ending that you mentioned earlier. Yes, you mentioned that Marcus shot different ending, and since our Q&A here is actually open for public who already see the film,
Okay,
if
good.
you could share what was the other ending that was shot.
It was sort of a different dream sequence.
I see.
There was this thing where the boy in the forest discovers some leftover walls from a house that used to be there. And then he starts dreaming that it's a real house, and he goes to sleep there, and he's awoken by his mother, who then turns out to be a police woman. So it was a more like,
I see.
Yeah, like a mixture of fantasy and dream. But for whatever reason, it didn't quite work. And when I saw the ending that Marcus shot, I felt like it was a very strong ending that leaves you with a couple more questions too.
And personally, I like this ending, like an open-ended, and it leaves it leaves interpretation to audience who see it. I choose to be hopeful for the boy. I assume that wherever part of the forest that he can step on, then he can become residents or citizens by anyone who picks up. But have you heard any other reactions from audience about the ending?
Yeah, people always ask us about open endings, why we left it open, and I thought that with the boy having delivered such a strong performance, it's actually kind of fun to imagine what will happen to the boy, because he's very resilient. He's not someone to give up. So it could go any way with the boy, and I like to imagine what could happen to him 3 years later or something like that.
That's true. And is that also the reason why you choose the character of Roman at this particular age, not younger and not older?
Yeah, at first we were thinking about a younger boy, but then we thought that he will have to do also some physical things that a younger boy couldn't do. But we didn't want him to be in puberty, because then it becomes a different issue, and also then his reactions would have been very different. We like the idea to throw someone who's still very childlike into these horrible situations, but he's such a strong-willed character that he finds enough energy and resistance within himself to work through it.
And has he seen the film himself, the Yeliza?
Yes. There was a premiere in Odessa in the Ukraine.
Okay.
And he finally was able to see himself for the first time a couple of weeks ago.
How did he react?
He liked it. I think I couldn't go, but Marcus went. But I think he just also liked very much being at a festival and getting applause and all that, which is great that he finally gets some feedback. Yeah. And
this film was released last year during the pandemic. Has it been screened in Germany?
Yes, it's been all over. The premiere was actually in Korea, in Busan.
Yeah,
the world premiere, and then it played in the US. It won the whole film festival here in Germany, and that was in front of an audience, but a very reduced audience. And it just played in Berlin. It won 3 major awards there: Best Film, Best Screenplay, and Best Camera. And it will play in a couple of different German cities now. Yeah. And also in Japan and Taiwan. Yeah.
Other than the ending, what was like? What kind of reactions that you normally get from the people who have seen the film?
I think one comment we get a lot is that people were happy that the film is not a very didactic film that's trying to offer solutions or point a finger at problems. People seem to appreciate that it's a little bit more universal. And that's something we work when we started writing this, the refugee crisis in Europe had just started. And some people really tried to push us in a direction that we should incorporate the current crisis. And we thought, no, that will just, 5 years from now, it will already be old. And we didn't want to do it. So we stuck to telling a bit more of an allegorical story.
I see. Okay, in between our chats, let's attend some of the questions that are already in Q&A box. Some of these are in Indonesian, so let me translate that for you. Okay, so the first question is from Nathaniel Tanugroho. This is in Indonesian. Let me translate it in English. Good afternoon, Lars and Europe on Screen team. I would like to ask, are there values from this film that you want to convey to teenagers whose emotions are not stable yet, besides appreciate what you have before they're gone, or we cannot judge people from their outer experience? Thank you so much.
I think not so much values, but it's, sometimes you see someone on the street and he looks poor or something, and I think, behind every person is a story. And not everything is a personal decision. A lot of decisions are made by you or a circumstance or accident. So I feel like, if you see a boy running with a gun in the forest and he's screaming, there's a story behind that. So he got to that point, and it's a very tragic story. So I think if anything, you shouldn't judge people immediately. You should give them some time.
Yeah, as I think that is also how we see Gert, the man, like, he is not what he looks like.
Right.
Because it turns out to be a kind-hearted man. And also Olga, of course.
Yeah.
All right, another question that I would like to address is another question is in Indonesian from Julius de Loyola. Hi Lars, I'm Julius, film and television student. I would like to ask how you write the script of the Rivale, whose characters speak different language, whether this is written in their native language, even if you don't understand, or do you write this in German? And the second question is how the director directs the young actor that play Roman in different language. Does the director understand the different language? Thank you.
We wrote the screenplay in German, and we would put in parentheses when there's a different language. So we would write Ukrainian, but then the dialogue is written in German. On set, there was a translator and acting coach for the boy who would translate Marcus's directions to the boy. There are actually 3 languages. Sometimes they speak Russian and sometimes they speak Ukrainian. So it's 3 languages really that are spoken in the film.
Were there parts that you think getting lost in translation?
I don't think so. I think it's there's so little dialogue in the film overall that the little dialogue we have, I think, is pretty clear because they don't speak complicated sentences. I think it should I don't know how it went over in Indonesia, but I would assume that it's watchable and understandable.
We only have English subtitles, and so we rely on whatever is presented in the subtitles. But I think so far from the audience response, nobody commented on the scenes
good.
Not being clear. I think it's pretty clear what the film wants to convey. Other questions actually we have addressed because the first one is about the responses of the movie. Yeah, we have covered that, and also the inspiration of the story from the film. Also, we have earlier covered that. So, so you mentioned that Marcus is a documentary filmmaker. Is this his first feature-length film?
No, he's made another feature film but a while ago, I think in 2004 or 2005. And then he was shooting a lot, both as a director and as a cameraman on documentary films. But we had a different project that we started like 12 years ago, but that never came to life. And now we're actually rewriting the screenplay, because with the success of this film, it will hopefully be easier to get the other film made.
Oh, right. But how long was it take? How long did it take from the script to the film, to Rivale being made?
We started writing Rivale in, I think it must have been 2015.
Okay.
Somewhere around then. And then we got some funding, but it was really hard to get the funding. People didn't want to come on board for whatever reason, which is why it's so nice to see the film travel the world now, and it's winning a lot of awards, and people react to it very strongly. But it's a very small film made with very little money. But I have to give a special credit also to Frank Amann, the cinematographer, who didn't have a lot of equipment, but I think he managed to make some beautiful images, especially in the end in the forest. There's some really haunting imagery.
When did you shoot the film?
This was shot in 2019, so it was before the pandemic, and then the editing took a long while, also because Marcus had other jobs that he was working on, and then the world premiere was September 2020.
Okay, so from 2015 to 2019, so 4 years in getting the film made. I would say that's pretty okay. I mean, of course, it's difficult to get a small film made, but it was eventually made.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's always different. I've worked on projects that are much bigger, that get made very quickly, and other films take a long time. I feel like every project.
Sorry, it's either me or Lars are freezing at the moment. I see. Okay. So meanwhile, while waiting for Lars to rejoin us, let me address some of the question here. So the film is based on the moment that the director saw in an airport. He saw a woman. Apparently there is some connection issue. Okay, let me address some of the question here. The film was based on a small moment that the director Marcus saw in an airport. He saw a woman. Hi, welcome back.
I'm sorry.
No problem. Issues. Yeah. So you mentioned that you work in various films, bigger films that were green-lighted quickly, and this film was actually a small film that took a few years to make. Yeah. So that's where we left off.
Right.
Okay. Are you working on anything at the moment?
Yeah, I'm working on a TV crime thing right now.
All right.
And actually shooting on another film that I wrote just started a couple of days ago. It's an adaptation of a coming of age novel.
Okay.
And and I'm working on another adaptation. So a couple of projects going on. Yeah.
All right. And then will you be working? Will you be, like what you said, you revisiting one of the projects that you developed with Marcus earlier on?
Yeah, we are rewriting the script, so hopefully it can get made maybe next year or in 2 years, who knows.
Right. Well, anyway, thank you so much, Lars, for your time. It's been a pleasure talking.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and thank you for stepping up at the very last minute. So appreciate your time and your availability. But before we leave, let's take a picture together, and our technical host will guide us. So either Panji or Neta.
Okay, everyone, I am the host for this session. We'll take a short photo session. Show your best pose and smile. I will count to 3. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, once again. 1, 2, and 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Lars. Have a rest of a good. Have a rest of the day. Have a good rest of the day.
Yes, you too.
And good luck. Good luck for your project.
All the best to Indonesia. Bye.
Bye, Lars. So that was Lars Hubrich, last minute replacement for Marcus Lenz from the film Rivale. And for the untuk penanya terpilih yang akan mendapatkan merchandise dari Europe on Screen adalah Julius De Loyola. Terima kasih, Anda akan dihubungi oleh tim Europe on Screen. So that is the end of the film talk today. Besok akan ada 2 sesi film talk. So tomorrow we will have excuse me, let me check the schedule. Yeah, tomorrow we will have 2 film talks. The first one is with the director of Letters from Antarctica, Stanislav Donchev, and the directors of Becoming Mona, Sabine Lubbe-Bakker and Niels van Coverden. We will start the film talk at 3 p.m., jam 3 sore, and the next one will be at 4 p.m. atau jam 4 sore. I'm Noval, signing off and goodbye.